Hi, welcome back to Insibook. Today I'm going to summarize The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel with its key ideas and powerful lessons on how human behavior, emotions, and mindset shape financial success far more than intelligence or technical knowledge ever could. Let's dig in. Doing well with money has remarkably little to do with how smart you are, and a great deal to do with how you behave. It is not a hard science, like physics, where a set of unchanging laws dictates outcomes. Instead, it is a soft skill, a deeply psychological endeavor where your behavior is more important than the formulas you know or the spreadsheets you can build. To truly understand why people make the financial decisions they do, why they bury themselves in debt, why they sell at the bottom of a market crash, or why they chase speculative bubbles, you don't need to study interest rates in exhaustive detail. You need to study the history of greed, insecurity, optimism, and fear. Financial success is fundamentally about mastering your own psychology. We aren't rational automatons. We are complex human beings, guided by a messy and often contradictory web of emotions, unique life experiences, and ingrained biases that have been shaped over millennia. Your personal experiences with money, for instance, make up a minuscule fraction of what has happened in the world, yet they account for the vast majority of how you think the world works. This is why no one is truly crazy when it comes to their financial decisions. We are all just operating from our own unique and limited understanding of the world. A person who grew up in abject poverty will have a fundamentally different view of risk, reward, and the value of a dollar than the child of a wealthy investment banker. Someone who lived through the Great Depression and watched their family's savings evaporate will carry a different emotional response to stock market volatility than a tech entrepreneur who came of age during the dot-com boom and has only known a world of upward trending markets. Consider the role of inflation. Someone who grew up in the United States in the 1970s experienced runaway inflation that eroded their purchasing power, making them deeply skeptical of holding cash. In contrast, someone who grew up in Japan during the 1990s and 2000s experienced decades of deflation, where cash actually increased in value, rewarding a more conservative approach. Neither person is wrong. Their financial common sense was simply shaped by the corner of history they happened to occupy. The same is true for financial products. The 401k, the Roth IRA, the index fund, these are all remarkably recent inventions in the grand scheme of things. If you were born in a different era, your entire financial playbook would be different. Our decisions are often rooted in these deeply personal and often emotional histories, which makes it seem like others are acting irrationally. This reality leads to a critical understanding of two of the most powerful and often overlooked forces in finance: luck and risk. They are siblings, two sides of the same coin, and every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. When we succeed, we tend to attribute it all to our own skill, foresight, and hard work. When we fail, we are quick to blame external factors and bad luck. The truth is that both success and failure are profoundly and consistently influenced by chance. You can make a perfect decision and still have a bad outcome because of risk. You can make a mediocre decision and have a wonderful outcome because of luck. Consider the story of Bill Gates. He was, without a doubt, a brilliant and uniquely driven young man. But he also had the incredible and statistically infinitesimal luck of attending one of the only high schools in the entire world with a computer in the 1960s. This wasn't just any computer. It was a sophisticated machine that allowed the teenage Gates and his friend Paul Allen to gain thousands of hours of programming experience at a time when most university professors didn't have such access. Without that specific stroke of fortune, the Microsoft story as we know it might never have happened. Conversely, Gates's equally talented high school friend, Kent Evans, was destined for the same stratosphere of success, but died in a mountaineering accident before he could graduate. One life was touched by an extreme outlier of luck, the other by an extreme outlier of risk. The line between the two is razor thin. Because of this undeniable role of chance, we must be incredibly careful when we study extreme examples of success and failure. The billionaires and the bankrupts who dominate financial news are often the least applicable case studies for our own lives. Their outcomes were so heavily influenced by the far ends of the luck and risk spectrum that their stories are more akin to winning the lottery than to a replicable strategy. It is far more instructive to look for broad, generalizable patterns of success and failure. Instead of trying to emulate Warren Buffett, a singular outlier whose success is a product of a specific personality in a specific environment over a specific period of time, it's more productive to understand the general principles that guide long-term financial well-being: patience, a high savings rate, and a long-time horizon. This requires humility when things go right and forgiveness when they go wrong, because it's never as good or as bad as it seems. One of the most dangerous and common psychological traps we fall into in the pursuit of wealth is the ever-moving goalpost of enough. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. It's a simple idea, but it's one of the most difficult to put into practice. The world is full of cautionary tales of people who had everything: fame, fortune, freedom, and threw it all away in the pursuit of more. This insatiable hunger is often fueled by the poison of social comparison. When we measure our own success against the success of others, we are playing a game that can never be won, because there will always be someone with more. The ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it, which is another way of saying that it is a battle that can't be won. The only way to win is to refuse to fight it in the first place, to accept that you might have enough, even if it's less than those around you. The true, quiet engine of wealth creation is not necessarily earning the highest returns, but the unrelenting power of compounding. Compounding, as Albert Einstein supposedly said, is the eighth wonder of the world. But it only works if you can give your assets years and years, decades even, to grow. Consider Warren Buffett again. He is a phenomenal investor, but the real key to his immense wealth isn't just his skill. It's the fact that he has been investing consistently for over 3/4 of a century. He started when he was a child. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. Had he started investing in his 30s and retired in his 60s, you would have likely never heard of him. This highlights a crucial distinction that is often missed: getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. Staying wealthy, however, is an entirely different skill set. It requires the opposite of taking risks. It requires humility and a deep-seated paranoia that what you've made can be taken away from you just as quickly as it was created. The only way to stay wealthy is through a combination of frugality and a constant awareness that a portion of your past success was likely due to luck, and therefore cannot be relied upon to repeat indefinitely. If there is a single word to summarize the secret to money success, it is survival. Good investing is not about making a few great decisions that earn you eye-popping returns. It's about consistently not screwing up. It's about avoiding the catastrophic mistakes that take you out of the game. You must survive the inevitable downturns and periods of chaos to be around for the long, slow march of compounding. This leads to a powerful understanding of tails, or the outsized impact of outlier events. In many areas of life, and especially in finance, a small number of events account for the majority of outcomes. You can be wrong more often than you are right and still end up on top. This is because the magnitude of the few correct decisions can far exceed the magnitude of the many small losses. The venture capital model is built entirely on this principle. A venture capitalist understands that the vast majority of their investments will fail, returning nothing. But they also know that a few spectacular successes, the one or two tail events in their portfolio, will more than make up for all the losses and generate the fund's entire return. This is why it is so important to stay in the game. You have to be able to survive the inevitable downturns and periods of underperformance to be around when the tailwinds of fortune finally blow in your favor. What then is the ultimate goal of all this saving and investing? The highest dividend money pays is the ability to control your own time. It is the freedom to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. This, far more than any luxury car or designer watch, is the true and highest value of financial independence. People are generally happier when they have a strong sense of control over their own lives. Having the ability to choose what you do, when you do it, and with whom you do it, is one of the most powerful drivers of well-being. We often believe that having more money will make us happier, but we often use that increased wealth to buy bigger and better things, which in turn can lead to a greater loss of control over our time. A larger house means more upkeep and higher expenses, which may tether you to a more demanding job with less free time. The real goal should be to use money not just to acquire stuff, but to gain autonomy. This brings us to the subtle but critical nature of wealth itself. Rich is a current income. A person driving a $100,000 car is visibly rich, but wealth is hidden. It's the income not spent. Wealth is the car not purchased, the diamond not bought, the first-class upgrade foregone. Wealth is the financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the stuff you see. We tend to judge wealth by what we see because that's the only information we have. But the truth is, the only way to be wealthy is to not spend the money you have. This is not to say you should live a life of utter asceticism, but to recognize a fundamental paradox. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. The world is filled with people who look modest but are truly wealthy, and people who look rich but are living on the razor's edge of insolvency. Wealth, therefore, is the option to purchase something later. With this understanding, it becomes clear that building wealth has less to do with your income or your investment returns, and a great deal more to do with your savings rate. You can build wealth without a high income, but you have absolutely no chance of building it without a high savings rate. This is the one financial factor that you have near complete control over. Your investment returns are subject to market whims, and your income can be influenced by the industry you're in and the health of the economy. But your savings rate is determined by something much simpler: the gap between your ego and your income. One of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't necessarily to raise your income, but to increase your humility. When you desire less, you spend less. When you spend less, you can save more. It's a simple equation, but one that is often overlooked in a consumer culture that constantly encourages us to spend more to signal our status. When it comes to the act of investing, it's far more important to be reasonable than to be purely rational. We are not machines. A financial strategy that looks perfect on a spreadsheet may be psychologically unbearable in the real world, and a strategy you can't stick with is a useless one. For example, a purely rational approach might suggest that a young person should invest 100% of their long-term savings in stocks, as they have historically provided the best returns. However, the gut-wrenching volatility of the stock market can be emotionally grueling, and many people, when faced with a 30% or 40% drop in their life savings, will panic and sell at the worst possible time. A more reasonable approach might be to hold a portion of your assets in less volatile investments, like bonds or cash, even if it means sacrificing some potential return. This is where the concept of a margin for error becomes one of the most underappreciated forces in finance. Room for error, or a margin of safety, is about creating a buffer between what you expect to happen and what could happen if things go wrong. This isn't just about holding some cash or diversifying your investments. It's a mindset that applies to all aspects of your financial life. It means not taking on so much debt that a job loss would be catastrophic. It means underestimating future returns and overestimating future expenses in your retirement plan. A margin for error allows you to endure the inevitable mistakes, bad luck, and downturns without being wiped out. It lets you stick around long enough for the odds of success and the magic of compounding to fall in your favor. The person with enough room for error in their strategy has a durable edge over the person who is leveraged to the hilt and gets wiped out the first time they are wrong. We must also acknowledge the simple but profound fact that our goals and desires will change over time. The person you are today is not the person you will be in 10 or 20 years. Your values, your priorities, and what you want out of life will evolve. Therefore, your financial plan should reflect this reality. It's crucial to avoid the extreme ends of financial planning. Don't assume that you will be happy